Hey guys, Script Reviewer with another video, and I know this isn't Star Wars. I do like to do some other videos sometimes. This one in particular, I mean, this is a really crazy story. And it looks like some of the people at Disney, or at Pixar, have learned some lessons here and are doing things a little bit differently and kind of salvaged the company in a lot of ways. So, Inside Out 2 was the hit Pixar needed, but the laid off employees who crunched on it are still hurting. 10 former Pixar employees talk about the pains of this year's layoff, the pressure that surrounded Inside Out 2, and larger cultural concerns at the studio. And it really is going to illustrate the problem with this mentality of this sort of community control over movies and stories and stuff like that, rather than having individual creatives write stuff. So I'm not going to go through this whole article. It's really long, but battered by shutdowns, blah, blah, blah. Pixar's done pretty terribly. Inside Out 2 isn't just Pixar's highest grossing film. It's the highest grossing animated movie of all time at a jaw-dropping $1.6 billion, which is pretty crazy when you think about it. Okay, so how did they get there? Many of the workers inside Out 2, for them it's a little bittersweet. As reported earlier this year, the studio began layoffs affecting 175 workers or 14% of its staff in May. And not only are laid-off employees unable to benefit from a bonus, some are recovering from what several sources describe as an unprecedented crunch surrounding Inside Out 2. Some of the animators worked a lot. Yeah, whatever. I would venture to say at least 75% of the people who got laid off are financially effed right now. Outside of the financial strain of it all, sources also paint a picture of a studio that's terrified to rock the boat, with some internally pushing to avoid LGBTQ themes, requiring edits to Inside Out 2. It's a studio, they say, that's overly reliant on Chief Creative Officer Pete Docter stubbornly set in its ways and setting its remaining team up for more crunch in its future films. What does that mean, crunch? Taking out LGBT themes doesn't sound like crunch to me. Crunch sounds like you're like at the last minute packing in hour trying to get the job done. The internal culture of Pixar right now is really rough, one employee said. There's just an incredible amount of people who are like, I can't do this anymore. What do you mean? I have a feeling this is a social justice issue. These people are angry because they're not making the movie the way they wanted them to. Or didn't make the movie the way they wanted it to. Soul, Luca, and Turning Red were all released directly on Disney+, skipping theatrical runs entirely. Lightyear was a well-publicized disappointment, closing out its box office run with just $226 million worldwide. While the next film, Elemental, did end up faring better with nearly 500, it had to rebound from what Pixar president Jim Morris admitted was a disappointing opening of just $29.5 million domestically. According to one source, due to the profit-sharing model at Disney Pixar, a movie has to cross $600 million to be considered profitable for Pixar, and it's not seen as a true hit until that coveted $1 billion mark. Okay, let's do a situation where Inside Out 2 was seen as the film that could reverse the studio's fortunes, making it one source called All Hands on Deck Studio Emergency. It was where we were told to find someone who worked at Pixar in the past couple of years who didn't contribute to Inside Out 2. One source points out that the credits for Inside Out 2 are longer than any other Pixar movie, given this amount of studio workers who were pulled in on it. Some go so far as to say they believe Pixar would fall apart if Inside Out 2 wasn't a runaway success. It was seen by many employees as a life or death situation for the studio. That was the pressure felt by everybody, one source says. We need this movie to succeed because we won't have a studio otherwise. And that is the pressure that everybody felt the whole time. Even now, I think people are gone, still feeling that pressure like, oh my god, we did it. Okay. Yeah, hey. Whether or not Pixar was actually in danger isn't confirmed, but a Time interview just before the release of Inside Out 2 Doctor said, if this doesn't do well in the theater, I think it just means we're going to have to think even more radically about how we run our business. Inside Out 2 had many of the obstacles that the Pixar movies before it did, and even some that didn't. It was heavily impacted by the strike, but as other films were delayed out of summer 2024, Pixar was adamant about staying put. The unwillingness to delay the film persisted despite last-minute rewrites and the quiet expansion of Doctor's role on the film. While Doctor is publicly an executive producer in Inside Out 2, multiple sources say he stepped in as an uncredited co-director, working heavily alongside Kelsey Mann. In some ways, that move made sense to many. Doctor, after all, co-wrote and directed the first Inside Out, in addition to boasting directing and story credits on beloved Pixar movies like Up, WALL-E, and Toy Story. I mean, you saw the end result of that It made $1 billion at the box office. One person says of Doctor taking a larger role. That was a direct result of Pete's involvement. Pete's a genius. Nobody can dispute this. Well, and that's what I'm saying. Like, why were all these other people chiming in? Give it to the person who knows what they're doing. That's the best way to make movies. Making movies by committee is not as good. Look at the Star Wars writing group and stuff. It's by committee. No, and then you have 50 million people chiming in, and I don't want to make anyone mad, so we'll do everybody's stupid ideas. No. Many of the sources IGN spoke to generally don't have particularly negative feelings toward Doctor. It's well known after all these years, proven track record, blah, 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 blah. You can't do anything without Pete, blah, 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 blah. Multiple sources say that Disney leadership internally put a large part of the blame for Lightyear's financial failure on a same-sex kiss in the film, which was briefly removed, then reinstated after an internal staff uproar. And there it is. There it is. That's why you don't hire based on these stupid things. DEI or whatever. You hire based on merit. And this is the other reason why you don't have a committee. And then if these people are so pissed off that you took the kiss out, bye. Not your decision. You work here. My decision. I'm running this show. And I think this is what's happening with a lot of entertainment is they are caving to these young people that are trying to force their personal issues into family-friendly entertainment that most people don't want. I'm not saying everybody doesn't want it. Some people do. That's fine. But if you want to make money, most families aren't into it. Like, look at this. In a joint statement to Walt Disney Company leadership, LGBTQ workers and allies at Pixar said the leadership was censoring overtly gay affection. That's why I don't hire these people. That's why I wouldn't hire them. Because it's not enough to just be like, hey, be part of the team, like we're making stuff, blah, 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 blah. It's no, you have to put our things in this, or we're going to be mad. It's the same reason, I've talked to a couple buddies that own businesses, and they're like, I would never hire somebody with pronouns in their bio. Why? Well, because they're just going to be problematic. They're going to complain. Somebody accidentally makes a mistake, uses the wrong one, or says something mean to them, and they're going to freak out. It's going to cost me time. It's going to cost me money. They were like, it's just not worth it. And you're seeing this. Because can't you just be part of something? Like, what was that show? Queer Eye for the Straight Guy. Do you think it's possible that there was like a bunch of straight people in the background of that show that just did their jobs and shut up? Do you think that's possible? I think it's very likely. Whether they were cameramen or grips or artists or joke writers, I'm sure there were some straight people on that show in the background that never said, you better start talking about straight stuff, you guys, right now. Like, no. Censoring overtly gay affection at a time where employees were also protesting the company's response to the Florida's Don't Say Gay bill. Which is not what it was. Not to get political, guys. It just said, don't teach little kids about any kind of sex. Gay or straight or otherwise. Which I think is pretty reasonable. But because there were gay things that they were teaching, they turned it into the Don't Say Gay bill. I remember that. I remember people freaking out about that. And it was like, no, they just don't want sex to like little kids. They're too young. And that's the other thing I don't understand why they freak out when it has to do with little kids. Like, wouldn't you be like, oh, okay, yeah, I guess we shouldn't really be teaching them about sex. But instead they freak out and make it about them? Not all gays and lesbians, I'm not saying that, but those particular ones that got all riled up, it's like, why are you so interested in these little kids learning about sex, dude? Like, why do you want them to? It is, as far as I know, still a thing where leadership, they'll bring up Lightyear specifically and say, oh, Lightyear was a financial failure because it had a queer kiss in it. One source tells IGN, that's not the reason the movie failed. Now, I don't think that's the reason the movie failed, either. I think it looked corny. It wasn't a Toy Story. They got a different guy to do Buzz Lightyear's voice. Like, not getting Tim Allen to do it right there kiboshed the film. I don't care if the whole thing is a giant lesbian kiss scene. You change the voice of the character, and they did that because they don't like his politics. See, and that's the problem. They made it all about politics, whether it's we have to force a gay kiss, or whether we don't want the voice of a guy who's a conservative. Instead of just being creative and making something and not worrying about that. I mean, you don't have to like Tim Allen, but Buzz Lightyear not being his normal voice sounds dumb. I don't want to watch that, and I never did watch that. Now, I found out after I decided not to watch it because he wasn't the voice that there was this lesbian kiss scene or whatever, and I was like, I don't really want my little kids watching that, you know? I don't even really like my little kids watching, like, make-out sessions at all, even just kissy scenes at all. Like, some of the older Disney stuff, yeah, at the end there'll be a little kiss scene or something. But even that, I'm not, like, a huge fan. But, yeah, I mean, we don't really want that. But ultimately, I think the Tim Allen thing, right away, that was it. That was the killer. And then the animation stuff, it wasn't Toy Story. It was something stupid. But I think the kiss scene probably contributed to some degree. Because there's a lot of people that don't want their kids to see that. Sorry, they just don't. And they don't have to. And that doesn't make you a bigot. That type of thing is an adult theme. Right? Like, for the average person, a boy kissing a girl, you don't even think about it. Even little kids don't even really think about it. But when same-sex people are kissing, it immediately triggers, right, in their brains. Oh, what's that? Why are they doing that? What's going on there? And some of us as parents don't want them to be having to deal with those questions when they're too young. I'm perfectly fine with them dealing with them as they get older, teenagers, whatever. And I don't care what anybody does. As a grown adult, you do whatever you want to do. I am not judging you. I don't care. But when it comes to kids, people have lines. And you can't just kick those aside and think because you're Disney that people are going to ignore what you're doing. Just because you're a legacy brand. No. That's just the reality of the situation. Now, Doctor largely uses the language of making universal stories, which to him means something that's very homogenous that anyone can relate to. This is what I was saying the other day with the Acolyte video. Stick to timeless things that everyone can relate to. Don't bring in stuff that only a certain sect of society would understand, and then expect everybody else to gobble it up and relate to it. It doesn't work that way. Sure, have a gay character, nobody cares, but have the goal of the film or movie or whatever to be timeless. Something that everyone relates to. Gay, straight, T's, Q's, B's, right? Which is, you know, the temptations of life and all that stuff. We went into that the other day at the Star Wars. Luke's temptation and overcoming it. Everyone can relate to that. We've all been tempted to do bad stuff. And we've either failed or we've succeeded. We've all been through that. And so gays and lesbians can relate to that too. The apparent hesitance to touch on LGBTQ themes, storylines in particular, affected Inside Out 2's development. According to several of our sources, multiple people recall hearing about continuous notes to make Riley, the main character of both Inside Out movies, come across as less gay, leading to numerous edits that ramped up around September 2023 after the resolution of the WGA strike. Sources describe rumors that there was a special care put into making the relationship between Riley and Val, a supporting character introduced in Inside Out 2, seem as platonic as possible, even requiring edits to the lighting and the tone of certain scenes to remove any trace of romantic chemistry. One source describes it as just doing a lot of extra work to make sure that no one would potentially see them as not straight. Well, because we don't want to worry about whether they're gay or straight. It's a kid's movie. It's worth noting that Pixar released a short in 2015 that followed Riley's first date with a boy. Still, many fans online started to call out queer coding in Inside Out 2 from the moment the first trailer arrived. The movie also teased a deep, dark secret that Riley was harboring throughout, only to reveal in the post-credits that the secret was that she once burned a hole in the carpet. Many fans, however, thought the reveal would be that Riley was actually grappling with her sexuality and even felt baited over what it actually was. Again, I don't want my kid to watch a kid grappling with their sexuality. Kids aren't sexual. I know some kids get put in situations and they're having relations at 12, 13 years old. Sorry, I don't think that's okay. People say, well, that's normal. No, it's not normal. It's not normal to me. And it's not normal to a lot of parents. I'm sorry. I don't want those themes introduced to my kids. So if that is what happened, that was a smart move, because I think I'm in the majority of parents that would bring their kid to a movie like this. And I don't know what it is with this obsession of, you know, pre-teen and mid-teen girls in particular in these IPs constantly like struggling with their sexualities. And you see it constantly, and I'm like, why are you so obsessed with this? Even if you are in the LGBTQ community, I don't think most lesbians or like bisexuals or whatever are like, yeah, you know, I think it's cool for like 12-year-olds to worry about this stuff, yeah. I mean, let me know in the comment section if you fall into that group of people. Like, do you really need that? Do you really think that's appropriate for, like, a 12-year-old to be worrying about stuff like that? Shouldn't she be worrying about, like, getting good grades, doing her chores, doing her homework, learning some other skill, whether it's in sports or whatever? Like, why would that be the thing they're worrying about at 12? But it feels like there's an agenda to get kids to worry about things that adults worry about. It's like we're stealing their childhoods and making them worry about things that they shouldn't even be worrying. I don't think 12-year-old girls should be worrying about boyfriends. And I know a lot of people, that's the case. One of my buddies was bumping Uggs as a 13-year-old, and he never stopped. And I don't think it was super healthy for him. But there was no one around to be like, don't do that. No one was telling him that's not what you should be doing. The school system certainly wasn't. Mind you, Riley is not canonically gay. In the film, what you saw, nothing about Riley says that she's gay, but it is kind of inferred based on certain contexts, and so that is something that they tried to play down at multiple points. Another source calls some leadership uncomfortable with queer themes at large, and the insistence on keeping those themes out of Inside Out 2 was a big thing throughout development. They're perfectly allowed to do that. They're allowed. All of this, the pressure, the creative bottlenecks, the story hesitations led to a rush in the last few months of production on Inside Out 2, former employees say, or as one source put it, a shit show. Yeah, they worked really long hours, blah, 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 blah. And it's just former employees complaining because they got fired. It was rushed work, paranoid leadership, mixed messaging. No, I think what happened is these people jumped on board to be a part of this, or were hired to be part of it. This is just my take. I could be super wrong. And then there was a whole bunch of them working on it that wanted these themes put in there. And then the main guy who runs the show was like, no, we're not doing this anymore. We're changing this. And then a whole bunch of them were mad, and so he fired them. Because it's not up to you as an employee to push your messaging. You do your job. Like I said, I'm sure there were straight people on Queer Eye for the Straight Guy that shut up and did their jobs. And they didn't demand that they do straight things on that show. Like, as far as Inside Out 2, one source claims that the crunch started in earnest just after the WGA strike, blah, 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 blah. Everybody, at least in my circles, when we were talking, it was just kind of a sense of, we just want to get it over with. We just want to be finished and done and not be looking at it anymore, which I don't feel like is the best way to make a movie that everyone feels good about. Sense of just push it through, we're just going to hit the finish line and get it over with. Yeah, so they were rushing at the end to fix these issues, as doctors saw them. Those who crunched were paid overtime, and workers were offered time off in return, although it could be hard to find time in the production schedule to take it. But sources say even with solid benefits and well-meaning team leaders, the production structure in place and the demands to meet the release timeline make for an untenable situation. So they do take care of us, blah, 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 blah. Others worry that due to Inside Out 2's success, Pixar won't have any motivation to change its bottlenecked systems. One recalls a recent company meeting where, citing Inside Out's victory, Doctor essentially expressed that they would replicate the system on Elio. And these people were just like, really? You kind of killed everybody on Inside Out, and now you're wanting to do that with Elio? And while not everyone crunched on Inside Out 2, what struck many of our sources is how many people who did were affected by the layoffs earlier this year. I'm not saying, I don't have some sympathy for you, like if you're being forced to work like crazy hours, but there's lots of jobs where you get pushed to work. I've been in those situations. I mean, it's sometimes in life that's the way she goes. And I'm not talking about situations where I'm sitting in front of a computer doing animations. I'm talking about like construction. I'm talking about like hard labor work. So 14% of Pixar's workforce began in late May, layoffs in late May. After Inside Out 2 was finished, the layoffs, Doctor said in a recent interview with The Ankler, were another thing that made this year really weird. Unfortunately, now Disney has come to the point where they realize, you know what, the amount we have to spend to do the quality we do doesn't make sense. Disney invested $1.5 billion in Fortnite. One former employee laments 1% of that $1.5 billion would have saved all of our jobs. The question, though, is do they need you? I feel like there's a lot of like, woe is me. But if they don't think they need you, then maybe they don't. And if they do the next movie and it fails because it looks crappy or whatever because you weren't there, then you can step up and say, see, that was stupid. But if they don't need you, then they don't need you. Now this is weird. The way the layoffs unfolded left those affected scrambling. Specifically, Pixar locked affected employees out of the network the day of the layoffs cutting off access to work materials for demo reels, personal files, benefit information, and more. Even keycard access was restricted outside of normal work week hours, and laid off employees were asked not to visit the office to pick up their belongings during those times. Not being able to pick up your crap is a little petty. Like, let them pick up their crap. This makes me think there was something big going on. Like, I have a feeling that a lot of these people were like the social justice warrior people in the company that were screaming and hollering and yelling. That's what this makes me think. And then they said, you know what? You're toxic. We're making a kids movie right now, and you're trying to take over. And you know what we're going to do? I'm going to come back in, and I'm going to take control because my director isn't controlling you idiots. And I'm going to get rid of you. And I don't want your infection affecting my staff. So you're going to come pick up your crap after they leave. Because otherwise, why would they do that? Why would they do that? That makes no sense. Like, normally, if you fire a guy, it's like, dude, get your crap and get out of here. Like, you want his stuff gone. You want everything about him gone. You don't want him having to come back and forth. So the fact that he forced them to do it when there was no employees there tells me there was something major going on there. And like I said, I think it was just a group of loudmouth people that wanted their way, and when they didn't get it, they started causing more problems. And so, doctors like, I'm taking over, man. That's the way she's going to be. Well, this might be common in other companies, not standard practice at Pixar. Exactly, that's what I'm saying. It's not standard. And left many of those affected feeling suddenly exiled, blindsided. Pixar did establish a system where laid-off employees could request material for the reels, but perhaps the shutout was more significant for symbolic reasons. One former employee remembers crying at the gates of the studio, feeling completely shut out physically, not just network-wise, but physically shut out without any communication. There was no one from HR or anything supporting us or guiding us. It was all mixed messaging, and that was super frustrating and emotional and just adding to the whole stress of it all. Dude, I'm telling you, well, why did they change it? If it's not standard practice, why'd they do that? Because these people were running their mouths. I'm telling you. In the meantime, the former employees were left to watch as Inside Out 2 became a runaway global success. One person there at the time says the studio felt out of touch with how they celebrated its blockbuster box office while those who worked on it were on the way out. Another laid-off employee recalls getting asked by industry colleagues about their potential bonus, giving Inside Out 2's now hit status, only to relay that they wouldn't be getting one at all. I'm telling you, something happened behind the scenes, man. There was a group of people that wanted things to be portrayed a certain way, wanted to make kids be like, hey, what's going on here? And then there was the guy in charge saying, no, we're not doing that. And they got loud, and they got angry, and they got mad. And then he said, get the hell out of here. Don't let the door hit you. Come back and get your crap tonight at 9 when no one's here. And I'm not saying that that's what happened, but that's what it looks like to me. That's what it looks like to me. It's bittersweet, one person said. I mean, it's like watching an XB with a movie star, basically. I'm happy for you, but why? Everyone IGN spoke to, so all these laid off people are saying basically the same thing. Something's uniform across everyone IGN spoke to. So again, this must have been a block of people that were causing problems. Some even can't bring themselves to see Inside Out. Yeah, I don't care about that. It's a situation where Inside Out 2's focus on grappling with various conflicting emotions is unfortunately fitting. Just to watch that movie do so well in theaters, it's great, one former employee says. I'm really happy for all of us at Pixar that want to see that, but for those of us who got laid off, it is really bad for some of us who just don't know what we're going to do now. Well, and if I'm right, that's why you should just do your job. And if you get to a point in life where you can be the person in charge and pushing whatever you want, then you can go ahead and do that. Others have concerns about the culture at Pixar and the storytelling. They're leaning more towards the Universal Stories Directive, especially with the apparent aversion to LGBTQ themes. A lot of us accepted the fact that we may never see a major gay character in a Pixar movie. Move on! Like, there's full streaming services dedicated to LGBTQ content. Like, I don't understand. But that's not good enough. Like, it's so weird. But at the heart of it, many of the sources IGN spoke to are just worried for the future of the studio. Many of them grew up idolizing. And the employees that are still there left. Apparently there's a particular low morale among remaining employees, especially as more work on LEO looms. Pixar, they argue, has taken all the wrong lessons from Inside Out 2's blockbuster success, all while being set in an unsustainable work processes. One person calls the studio rudderless, saying it got very lucky on Inside Out 2. That just sounds like bitter people. Making claims that the people that are still there are having these issues, and that it's rudderless. They learn nothing, and that's the feedback I'm still getting when I'm just reaching out to other employees, current employees. Another source says, right now, everyone's on LEO. Things are exactly the same, how they were before. Nobody's working crazy hours to get LEO fixed. Or, excuse me, everybody's working crazy hours to get LEO fixed. Well, what needs to be fixed on LEO? Now, the rumor that I've heard, and again, they delayed LEO. So I think somebody stepped in again, because the rumor that I heard is that he was going to be non-binary. Like, he's like a little kid, but they're going to kind of try and sneak in, he might be non-binary. However, they're going to do that in whatever subtle ways or whatever. And you're like, he's a little kid, he's a nothing. He's not even sexual. What are you talking about? And this is what I'm saying. Why is it important for these people to have kids involved in this stuff? So, I'm going to guess and say that it was going to go down that road similar to Inside Out 2, where it's certainly alluded to apparently that she might have been, an L. So they changed it. So I think in this case it's the same thing, where doctor stepped in and said, no, we're not doing that. We're here. We're a business. We're not activists here. We're a business first, and I think that's really the heart of the matter is why are these businesses being activists for these people? They have tons of organizations. They have tons of clout in education and all these things, and yet it's not enough. We got to have just everything has to be activism. I think the biggest feeling that I heard around the studio before the layoffs and now even post layoffs, talking to people who are still there, is everybody feels like the executives are really just acting in a fear-based way. It's fear-based. What does that make you think of? What's the issue? What was this block of people's issue? It's fear-based because they're scared to put what we want in their movie. No, I'm serious. Because it's all about their activism. Everything is to preserve their own power in their own jobs. Well, yeah, if the movies fail, Doctor loses his job, and he just put one out that was $1.6 billion. What do you think he's going to do? Go with what you guys want? So I think morale is really low because people no longer trust that they're being led with their best interest at heart. It's not your best interest. It's not activism. It's the company's interest. And plus, how do I know you're not making that up? You're speaking on behalf of the employees that are still there. If it was that bad, why didn't they leave? If there are any silver linings to be had, some say they're still fans of the studio because of the friends they still have there. Well, what to do? I don't care. Okay. Anyways, so there you go. So somebody walked in. There was a block of SJWs or whatever you want to call it. And Pete Docter walked in and said, no, we're not doing this. I'm here to do a job. My job is to make this company profitable. And so, no, we're not doing this. He got rid of them. And that's just the way it goes. This isn't an activist place. Go do that somewhere else. This is a corporate entity that is there to make a profit. And if you say, oh, well, how dare they make a profit over the activism? They employ a lot of people. It's good if they make money because then lots of other people have jobs. So it's not like they're hurting people. They just don't want to push a message, right? They're still helping people because they're giving people jobs. They just don't want to push a message. And that's okay. You don't have to do that. Anyways, guys, let me know in the comment section what you think. If you like this content, please like and subscribe. Always helps the channel. Check out the other stuff on my channel. And have yourselves a really good day.